born in Missouri Valley, Iowa in 1917. I moved there in about 1926 from
Claire has decided that for the rest of this video that she would do it off camera. So this is a picture of her family, her two boys, her two daughters-in-law, and four grandchildren. Now, if this other picture on the right cannot be deleted, it is her nephew, Dr. Donald Green from Thousand Oaks, California, who also came from the Midwest, not Missouri Valley, but Omaha. Claire, it's great to be here with you since I'm also a ex-Missouri Valleyan. So I want to ask you first about where your parents came from, how old, and how they got to Missouri Valley.
Well, my parents came from Minsk, Kaplan, Minsk, I guess it is. When, I don't know exactly. My mother was born in 1893, and my father was probably the same age or a year or so older than my mother. And how they got to Missouri Valley, they they got off the boat in New York and just kept going until they found a place they wanted to settle in because there was family already in Omaha. And so they lived there for a short time and had 3 or 4 children, and then moved to Missouri Valley. And that's where I was born, was in Missouri Valley. And I had a sister and a brother who also was born in Missouri Valley. The others were born in Omaha, except my oldest sister, Anna, who was born in Russia before my parents came here. And she was married to Max Garber. And the next sibling was Bess. She married Barney Gray. The next one was Rose. She married Ed Lincoln from Ralston. Then came Sam, and he married Leona Schneider from Lincoln. My sister Sally married Harry Schneider. They were sister and brother from Lincoln. Dorothy came to California in the 50s and married a Californian who was not a relation, but a relation by marriage. And she married that son of an aunt that had remarried. And that was it. So she was living out here. And I'm Claire, and I married Harold Tuckman in Omaha. And we moved here in about 1950, somewhere around there. And we had already had 2 children in Omaha. And then I had a brother, David, who also moved out here. He married a girl by the name of Abrahamson. Zelda was her name. And then they moved out to California.
Is that how you're related to Louise Abrahamson?
No, I'm related to Louise through my mother. My mother's maiden name was Miller. And her mother, and I believe Dave Miller's mother, were sisters. No, they weren't sisters. They were related somehow, but I don't really know how. I don't remember. But yes, all that Miller family, Daniel, Louise, and all of those were related to us through the Miller clan. And then the Greens, where Donald comes from, his mother was my mother's sister, and so we were then related to all that Green family in Omaha.
So tell me why your parents picked Missouri Valley.
Well, they weren't making a living in Omaha, so they just kept traveling. And they ended up in this little town in Missouri Valley. And my father always liked small towns, and he was very happy there, and he had a very lucrative business. He had a general store, and he sold overalls. Now they call them blue jeans, but they were overalls, and he sold them to the farmers who lived and worked on the farms and on the railroad. There was a railroad near. And then as his family of 8 grew, he took in children's clothes and children's shoes so he could clothe his family a little bit less expensive than buying at retail. So he did that. But no special reason to go to Missouri Valley. And we were the only Jewish family in Missouri Valley. And then another family moved in, and their last name happened to also be Kaplan. And then one other family moved in while I was there, and their name was Kaplan. So the Kaplans had Missouri Valley cornered, that's for sure.
What is your recollection about going to school in Missouri Valley?
Oh, I loved it. We lived right across the street from the school. And I remember them playing the march of, I can't think of the name now, but it was wonderful living in Missouri Valley and growing up in that little town and being completely free. I remember roller skating at night and going sledding down the hills in the winter at night, and there were no restrictions as long as we had supervision of an adult, only because we were kids. But you didn't have to worry about the things the kids worry about today. We weren't exposed to all the sadness and the tragedies and all that. Just didn't exist in a little town like that. And it was very healthy and fun, and it was wonderful memories. We used to reach out our bedroom window and pick cherries off of the tree and eat them in bed. Can't do that anyplace else.
So you were the youngest of 7?
8.
8.
I had a brother younger. My brother David was younger. I was the youngest girl,
Okay.
but David was the youngest boy.
All right, so when you were, say, in kindergarten, first grade, did you have some siblings in high school already?
Oh, yeah, yeah. In fact, my oldest sister was already married by the time I got to kindergarten.
And living with the family?
No, she lived with her, oh, yeah, no, that's right, no, that couldn't be. When I was in kindergarten, no, she wasn't quite married. She was probably just engaged, because we left a few years later and she was married. She moved in, we moved out after they were married, yeah.
Do you remember the fire escapes at the school across the street?
Oh, yeah.
Can you describe those?
Well, they were cylinder things. We used to slide down them all the time when school wasn't in session, and that was the most fun. Yes, and we used to go to the playground and play after schools and on weekends. Oh, and that was where our children's activities were. And my mother was very active in school activities because it was so small. I don't know how many in the school, but whenever they had a school play or whatever, my mother made costumes for all of us. And, oh yeah, my parents were always in the front row and very hands-on with their kids.
I don't know if we gave their first names.
My mother's name was Edith, and my father's name was Jacob. But I have a cute story about my mother, because she couldn't speak or read or write English when she came. And when she went to get her citizenship papers after having gone to school, she changed her name to Ida because that was easier to write and only had 3 letters, I-D-A. So on her papers, on her citizenship papers, her name is Ida because that was easier to spell.
What kind of Jewish practicing did you do in the house, or?
Yes, we did. My father taught us how to speak. First we learned how to speak Yiddish. All of us did. We learned some Hebrew. Some Russian we picked up because when they didn't want us to know what was going on, they would speak in Russian. And of course, after a time, we were able to pick up on that and catch some of it. But no, and my mother kept kosher in this town. And in order to do that, she had to drive into Omaha. And I think at that time, there were dirt roads. I don't know if they were even paved. I'm not sure. But they did drive into Omaha whenever it was necessary to get kosher meat. No, we had a very kosher house. Yeah.
The store was closed on Sunday?
On Sunday, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, there was some kind of law anyway.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you couldn't work on Sundays.
And what kind of car did you have? Remember?
Oh yeah, I've got a picture. that is in that envelope for you. We had a Dodge touring car with isinglass windows, and when we would go from Missouri Valley to Omaha, well, put 10 people in a car, you got a problem, right? Well, my father arranged this so that he took orange crates and he put them in the back seat so that the open part, the girls could get their feet in under to sit in the back, and we would sit on the sides, and we managed to get 10 people in that car. And during the holidays, we always went in to Omaha to go to synagogue,
Which synagogue?
Kaplan synagogue. And when we did this, this family of 10, if you can imagine this, just picture this, moved in on Donald's parents and his family. They had 3 children. Donald wasn't born yet, but they had 3 children. They lived above a grocery store at that time, and there was always somebody there, but we stayed overnight because you can't ride on Yom Kippur. 10 people. You could imagine the kind of woman that my aunt had to be to do this willingly, and we had so much fun with somebody. Donald's sister Evie played the piano. My brother Sam played a violin that was horrible, but it was all fun, and everybody, we played, it was wonderful. It was exciting, and it was so wholesome. I guess that's a good word. But imagine coming with 10 people for an overnighter. But we managed. But it was fun.
What do you remember about Saturday nights in Missouri Valley?
Oh, Saturday nights, I can just picture that. The streets were just filled with cars and trucks, and everybody from all the surrounding farms came into town. And that town was really buzzing. And there wasn't anything doing. It was just full of people, like wall-to-wall people. They didn't have any activities that brought them in. It was just to come to town. And the excitement was walking up and down the street and meeting friends or whoever you might know. The little town was only, I think, 2 blocks long on either side of the street. There wasn't anything more. But they had, on holidays, they had at the fairgrounds, then they had activities. Then they had all kinds of stuff. In fact, I remember they had Chautauqua. That was, you know what that is? That's when they had these tents, and they had, I don't know, like vaudevillian acts and speakers. I don't know what they were speaking about, but I do remember seeing Helen Keller.
No.
She was an adult at the time. I don't remember too much about her, but I remember that I had evidently heard about her from school, and to see her was, and this was at a Chautauqua gathering. And those were fun. And at the fairgrounds, my father always had a stand where he sold soft drinks and hot dogs. I don't think hamburgers. Anyway, and all of us kids were there working and selling, and my brother cut his elbow once. It was bleeding all over the place. But that's when there was activity. And then they came from all over, not just from the farms near us, but they would come from Council Bluffs, they would come from all the other little towns around.
Was that the forerunner to the county fair, or did they also have a county fair?
It was a forerunner to the county fair. This was just a, what do they call it? Just it's something going on at the fairgrounds, that's they called it. And then as we, no, that was someplace else. Anyway, that's, but those were very happy days, and I don't think in any little town today you can duplicate that situation.
Did any of your grandparents come to the United States?
Mm-hmm. My mother's father, and he came. My maternal grandmother died just as she was ready to board the ship, and that's why Alan's mother came by herself, because her mother had died while they were ready to leave. But my grandfather came, and he never did learn to speak English, because when he came, I don't know how old he was, but I always thought he was deaf because he couldn't understand me. And so I just kept talking louder and louder until finally my mother finally said to me, "My dear, it isn't that he doesn't hear, he doesn't understand." Well, I didn't understand that either. And so I just kept talking louder and louder, but he didn't answer.
Did he live with you?
No, he lived with Donald's parents, and he lived with them until he died. Mhm.
You and your siblings were born in hospitals in Omaha?
No, I don't know. I don't know. They were all born at home, and the three of us that were born in Missouri Valley, we all were born at home, yes. And we saw the doctor come with that little bag, and they knew that a baby was coming. But no, three were born there, the rest were born in Omaha.
Do you remember the name of the family doctor?
Yes, Phillips.
My family doctor, too.
Is he?
Yes.
Well, his can't be him. He would be too old.
No, he was very old when he was my family doctor.
Oh, yes.
When I was growing up. Yeah, I was born in 42.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he could still be living, yeah. And I want you to know that he got all our birthdays mixed up. I'm not sure how old I really am because on my birth certificate it says I've got a different name and I've only got 3 siblings. And I'm at the end of the line. But anyway, he was a really nice guy, and I know my parents, he was it. In fact, I don't think there was another doctor when we were there. That's way before your time.
Probably right.
And then, later, I think there was a doctor in Omaha whose name was Philip Scher. And somehow I remember Philip Scher coming to Missouri Valley to deliver maybe David, maybe my youngest brother. But he came in the picture someplace.
That's very interesting that you say that because the first Jewish retirement home was the Dr. Philip Scher home.
That's him.
That's him.
That's him. Hmm. I think he was my aunt's, Donald's mother's doctor, Annie Green.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she felt that he was better than Phillips, and so she wanted him to deliver that baby in Missouri Valley. That's probably how it happened, but I'm not sure.
All right, so in total, your parents lived in Missouri Valley how many years? About 15, 18?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. At least, uh-huh.
So at a certain point in time, they decided this is enough of Missouri Valley, it's time to
Well,
go to Omaha?
Yeah, they decided that they had 6 daughters growing up, and no Jewish families in Missouri Valley for them to marry, so they had no choice but to go to the big city of Omaha. And so we went to Omaha, and they did all get married. They did all marry Jewish men. They all married right down the line, which was also very unusual to have 6 girls all marry in turn and not have the older one, the old maid left over, even though the old maid might be 21. But that's how it was then.
What kind of business did your dad go into?
When he came to Omaha, he went into the grocery business, and we lived upstairs. Had a big place upstairs.
Where?
On 21st and Howard, I believe it was. There was a hospital across the street, Clarkston Hospital. And we lived in this big house upstairs. And you want to hear a funny story?
Sure.
Okay. Well, the girls now were growing up. I was still little, the littlest one. And smoking was taboo. Girls didn't smoke. Well, one day, the girls are all upstairs in this big house, and they're smoking, 3 of them, and they're blowing smoke out the window. And pretty soon we hear the fire trucks come, and the next thing we know is my father and the firemen coming up the stairs with their hatchets to put out the fire, because the neighbors had called the fire department to tell them that our house was on fire, but it was the girls smoking. And in unison, these 3 turned around with the cigarettes. That was the funniest thing. Later, it was funny. At the time, it wasn't very funny, because they were punished for that. But that was, when I think about it, and the way they all turned around, and there is that fireman with the hatchet. Marty, it was hysterical.
Claire, now I want to ask you about your recollection of school in Omaha when you moved there when you were 6 or 7 years old.
Yes, I went to Webster School because we moved I think originally to a big house on 27th and Webster. And I remember going to that school until I think I graduated 8th grade from there. Yeah, I did. And then is when we moved to the 21st and Howard. So my father had a different store, which was not groceries. When he first came to California, to Omaha, he couldn't make it go. So he gave that up. I think he sold novelties. I remember ribbons and buttons and that kind of stuff. And so I went to that school. And then we moved to 21st and Howard. And then I went to Mason School, elementary school. And that's the one I graduated 8th grade from. And then from there I went to Tech High and graduated there. And then I went to work for a block nog paper company. I was 16, and then that was as far as I went
Do you
because
remember
then I got married.
Do you remember the owners?
Oh, sure.
Who were the owners?
Joseph Block, Joe Block, and Ernie Nog, and Nathan Nog. And then they had a brother, forgotten his name, but he was younger. He's in the produce business, and I think he's still in the produce business in Omaha.
Do you remember Donald Nog? A son of, I think he was Ernie's son?
Yeah, but they were little, I didn't know. Anyway, and then I met my sweetheart.
Let me back you up a little
Okay.
bit. Tell me a little bit about your remembrance of events at Tech High School.
Oh, nothing too dramatic that I can remember. Absolutely nothing. There were a couple people from that school, though, who I met later out here. And one fellow that I knew had gone to Joe Salmano, who was a insurance man. He was a lawyer, and in fact, he was married to Sarah Kaplan. And I met him out here because he had been in the Army with friends of mine. And so we met out here. And I'm trying to think what's that got to do with all this.
I want to ask you, were your all your brothers bar mitzvahed?
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
And were any of them bar mitzvahed while you were still living in Missouri Valley?
No. No, in Omaha.
Still at the Kapuya Shul?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, I remember that. Anyway, well then all right, so now I'm back to school and work, and I met Harold Tuckman, whom I married when we were both young, and we had 2 children, 2 sons, and then we were married for about 8 or 9 years when we moved to California. And then all of my sisters and brothers, within a short period of time, all moved out.
You and your husband were the first to move?
No. Dorothy, my sister Dorothy, who married Harry Brooks, she came out as a single person and married here, and she was the only one at that time. And then my husband and I, Harold and I, came next. And then after we came, then Sally and Harry came, and then they just all, I don't remember in what sequence, but then Rose and Ed came, and my brother from Lincoln, from Red Oak, where my parents had another little store, came, and my brother who was in the service, David, he and his wife came, but they were divorced. I think she still lives in Omaha. I don't know what her married, or if she's married again or not.
How old were your boys when you moved to California?
My little one, Gary, had his 2nd birthday here, and the other one was 4. No, it would have made him 6. He was 6.
So can you remember the discussions between you and your husband and the rest of your family about this big decision to move from Omaha, Nebraska to sunny Southern California?
Well, no, it wasn't a big decision because I didn't like the snow and the cold, although I had lived with it all my life until then. And invariably, we'd dress the children to get them out, and that's when they had to go back in the house. No, and my sister was out here, and we were very close, because we were next in age. And we really came out on a vacation with the children. And we came and we stayed with that sister, and we just loved it. And so from then, I never did go back. Well, I mean, I didn't go back at that time. I stayed, and my husband went back. He sold our house, he sold the business, he did everything, and came back, and we just stayed.
What was your business?
Well, he had supermarket, and he sold everything. But I think the most interesting story about my life and his was that he was very talented, this Harold Tuckman, but due to circumstances, he was stuck with this market business, and when he came out here, that's what he did. He was working for Safeway stores. And I was always unhappy that he didn't pursue the career that he should have. He was artistic, he was a math whiz, and he had wanted to always to be an architect. But he went to school in Nebraska, he went to Nebraska U, but he didn't graduate because of the war and whatever was going on. And so after our two sons were married, oh, and in the meantime, I went to school and I became a nurse. And I was working. And when the second son got married, I said to him, Harold, you are going back to school, and you are going to be that architect that you've always wanted to be and that I always wanted you to be, and I'm going to work. And that's exactly what we did. Those were such wonderful times of our lives. He went back to school, he graduated, he became an architect.
At what age did he graduate?
In his 40s, and he was about 48, and he did wonderful things here in California. And I won't mention all of those things, but anyway, he finally did it. And I was working then as a nurse, and everything was wonderful. And the students from school would come to our house to study with him. It was like being a kid again. It was very exciting.
Did he specialize in certain kind of buildings?
Uh-huh. He specialized in interiors of banks. And he's the first one who put calculators in the stands where you make out your deposit tickets and stuff. That was his. He put that in the World Bank on Wilshire and Beverly Drive, I think it is, in Beverly Hills. That was the first one. And in that bank, he developed a conference room. I think you're too young to know about Rube Goldberg. Rube Goldberg was an artist who he did things like, oh, I can't explain it exactly, but if you pushed a button, 6 things would happen. He was Rube Goldberg. He did this. Well, that's what he did, and we called it the Rube Goldberg room, because you pushed a button, a screen went down. You pushed another button, then something else happened. The window opened, the lights went on, and he had worked this all out. It was fabulous, and that was the conference room in that bank, and he did that. He did other places, but that was the one that I remember the most because it was the most exciting. And he had such a super personality, and anybody who knows him will vouch for that, that he was as comfortable being with the presidents of the banks in order to get these commissions as he was with the workers who worked for him doing the work, manual work.
How often were you able to go back and visit your folks, or did they come out here to visit?
No, because my father died in Red Oak before anybody moved out of there except one sister. But then my mother came out here too after he died, and when everybody was coming out, she came too. And she lived here, and she died here in California.
At what age?
I think she was in her 80s. I don't remember exactly anymore. But she was a lovely lady. My father was a superman. I just adored him. So we had I had a very good, loving, caring childhood, and was lucky to marry Harold, who was a very unusual man. And we had We were married 35 years, which was beautiful, but that's a lot to live without when you've had the best. But then I was lucky again, and I met Harry Hartstein, who was really a very nice person, and we were married for 25 years, almost 25, 23, when he died 4 years ago.
Did he have children?
No, he had never been married before and never had any children, so we were starting over. And, so that was a very good marriage. We traveled. Then when we were married, when I was married to Harold, we were too busy with children and everything else. But with Harry, we traveled all over the world and had a very good life. And then now that's a lot to live without.
How long ago did Harry die?
4 years ago. So then life changes, but I'm very fortunate that I have very, very wonderful children. We're a very close family. We see each other all the time. When I say all the time, I mean like weekly or several times a week. And we spend holidays together, and yeah, we're very close.
Now, is Sally your only living sibling?
No, I have one other sister, Rose Lincoln. She is in a convalescent home in Maine because her daughter lives in Maine, and she had gone there before she was ill, and so that's where she is. So now that's Sally, myself, and Rose. And she's going to be 95 the end of next week,
And Sally, how old is she?
89.
And do you get together with Sally?
Oh, yeah, because she lives in Beverly Hills, so we speak on the phone more than once a day and see each other very often. Oh, yeah, very often.
Do your sons ever go back to Omaha and Missouri Valley just to see what family remains? I know there aren't very many, but have they visited there in the last 10 or 20 years?
No. In fact, I was trying to arrange for all of us, my sons, their wives, their kids, everybody, to go to Omaha like we were going to do it in May now. But we just couldn't work it out. This one was doing something and this one couldn't make it. So I'm still hoping that we can do that. But it's hard to get grown-ups with busy schedules and working schedules to be able to get freedom at the same time. So, but that's what we're working on. I'm working on that.
Well, your family home is still there, I'll tell you that.
In Missouri Valley?
Yes, it's still there.
Yeah.
Our store is not there anymore. Our home is. Your home is still there.
Yes. Now my husband, Harry Hartstein, we used to go back very often because I was very close with Elaine Garber Diamond. And I used to go and visit her, and she would come here and visit us. And so I had been back, but Harry and I went probably once a year for many years to Omaha, and just to visit with the family on our way to someplace or other.
Sam and Stanley Diamond's father was the Moyle when I was born.
Yeah, right, that's right.
Well,
all right, I don't know what else I could tell you.
Anything that, since we were going to provide a copy of this for you, anything that you would like to say about your growing up in Missouri Valley as it affected your family, your boys? Did it provide a good basis for being a good parent? Anything that you would like to say to the boys and their wives and their children?
Well, I think the important thing is that family was very important when I was growing up, and we were all very close. And my father was a man of great integrity, and I'd like to tell this little story about him. Because we were on the railroad was right there, and merchandise was coming back and forth, that some people, some men who were, I don't know whether they were hobos or what you would call them, but they would come to my father and say, "Hey, Jake, you know those shoes you ordered from St. Louis? Well, I can get them for you a third of the price." Well, my father knew that they were going to steal him if that was the case, because no way they could get him a third of the price. And he always said no, he wasn't interested. And I remember as a child hearing him say to my mother, and I've never forgotten it, and he's telling her the story about them wanting to sell him the shoes or the merchandise he had ordered at a third of the price. And he said to my mother, I know they're going to steal him, or they've already stolen. But he says, you know, Mama, when we go to bed at night, and if the knock on the door, I want it to be a friend or somebody who's in trouble, and nobody else. And I've never forgotten that, and that's the kind of man he was. And so those are the values that we all grew up with. That's only one incident. And with 8 children, when he would come home at night, he always brought something for these kids. It would be a package of Lifesavers, so there was enough for everybody. It would be a bag of popcorn, we all were doled out a little, or peanuts in the shell, I remember, or those penny candies. But he always came home with something, and no one was ever left out. And when you grow up with that, you just know,
Keep talking.
you just know that life is good, you know, and you don't have to